Hey, what's good? This video popped up on my feed. I watched it and I thought it was super interesting. I wanted to watch it with you to maybe do a little fact checking if we need to. This is a video titled Trump's Return Echoes Rome's Fall. Is America Next? By Tom Hartman. As a fair warning, Tom is a progressive radio host, and I don't know about you, but I'm tired of all these people. Left or right, they got me exhausted. All they talk about is the end of the world and how terrible things are. Meanwhile, we've never had it so easy and, dare I say, good. When is the last time you had to worry about a wolf eating you? I'm collecting as much data as possible so I know what to look out for, and I can be prepared for whatever it is that everyone else says that this country is turning into. We can meet here and compare notes. Get that conversation started in the comments. Let's get into this video. I'm going to be working on some warm-up sketches. Before we get into it, remember to go to coconutjustice.com and get you some clothes that I think would look good on you. Let's go. All right, Tom, with a TH, two N's in your last name. You seem to be important. You took all the letters. Anyway, I've seen a couple of Tom's videos in the past, and he seems reasonable, but, you know, I don't know. I'm not a subscriber to his channel, so I'm not 100% sure what to expect here. But let's get into it.
Mirrors Rome's darkest days. For 482 years, Rome was a democratic republic, more or less, but, largely a democratic republic, the world's second after, Greece 1,000 years earlier. Okay. And America has been a democratic republic, arguably, for 236 years. The end of the democratic phase of the Roman Republic, which was followed by several hundred years of tyranny, basically, and then the collapse of the empire itself. The end of the democratic phase of the Roman Empire was really brought about by a small group of very, very rich Roman citizens. Marcus Licinius Crassus.
That's something that I wanted to research. So let's take a look. Switch over to Safari and say, what was credited as the downfall of Roman society? Increasing pressure from invading people outside Roman culture also contributed greatly. What was the downfall of the Roman society? Corruption. All right, so now get in nice and close. This is where, to me, it doesn't matter left, right, or in the middle. If you're crooked, we don't have time for you. If we're giving you money to do the things that you say that you're supposed to do, and you don't do it, that's robbery, that's theft, and you're probably doing it because you're greedy. We have a good thing going. We don't need strong men, we don't need strong people, we don't need anyone here that isn't inclusive and can actually take a look at what everyone brings to the table to create an incredible nation. But we have a bunch of knuckleheads who don't know how to know when enough is enough. And they're ruining it for everybody else. If you are poor and you keep subscribing to this behavior, you're part of the problem. And there's way more poor people than there are rich people. Way more poor people. We need to pay attention and take a look. And I'm not even saying to like tear down the whole thing or like there's no such thing as rich people. That's ridiculous. I work too hard not to be one day. What I'm saying is we need to, as a nation, see that there are things that are happening. Our education system is not good. So then how do we walk around this planet talking that we're the best nation? The ideals behind this nation are definitely the best. When it comes to being, progressive and being different and everyone having rights and doing all those things, that's why we're here, folks. That's why we're here, literally in the United States, so we can build each other up and make a more perfect union and make a nation that's just unbeatable. Just saying the words doesn't make it true. We have an incredible amount of homelessness. Our education is, it's not up to par according to the people that are in office now. According to the people that are in office, Americans are either lazy or too dumb. That's where we are. So either we're too lazy and too dumb, or these guys have sold you on a false bill of goods. And the outgoing administration, I understand all of your frustrations with those folks too. I understand. But taking it out on each other, people that don't have anything, the people that are paying taxes and expecting things, expecting government to work for you, that, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're paying into this club membership and nobody's letting us in the club. Let's get back to it.
The leader of the band, he was the richest man in Rome, in the Roman Empire, the entire empire. Very, very wealthy. And he hated the fact that his taxes were paying for Rome's free bread for all policy. Remember bread and circus? Well, give people free bread, give them the Colosseum, and they won't revolt. Well, he didn't like that because it was being paid for with his tax dollars. So he and a few other rich guys, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus was probably the most famous. He was called Pompey the Great, or Pompey the Great. They wanted to end the voice of the public in political decision making.
Does that sound familiar? There's some folks here in this country that find different ways to keep people from voting. I kind of want to say so. In my day-to-day life, I want to say so. I want to be able to say whatever it is that I feel like I want to do with my life. I want the freedom to be able to do that with my life. I don't want to live according to your rules. I want to live according to my rules. It's just that simple. And then we're finding out that even though our prices are going up, it's more because the rich folks are gouging us. How are you going to have record profits and a silly amount of homelessness? How are you going to have price gouging and record profits at the same time? You're going to convince us that we're supposed to pay for all these high price things, and you guys are just stealing the bag. Let's go, Tom.
And particularly they want to end free bread, paid for with their tax dollars. So they use their massive wealth to promote authoritarian populism.
And then just to clarify my stance on that, if I'm giving the government money to operate, I need the government to provide basic essentials. If you take care of someone's health care, that's huge. That's huge because they feel like they can go out and stretch a little bit. You know what I mean? Like they can push the boundaries a little bit. Why do you think the internet has grown so much? It's because a bunch of dorks got together and just kept building on top of the internet and turned it into this. And like it or not, in a democracy, as many people should weigh in on the direction of the country. All of them, I think. But what these folks are trying to do is they're trying to keep people from voting. They're trying to keep you from voting. If you went to jail, even though you did your time, you don't get to say so anymore. In some districts, if you're black, they make it a little bit harder to vote. And that's not cool, man. That's not cool. If you're here, you should have a say so. And then the people that are in control, they should do that. They should control all this silliness about fighting in Congress and not getting anything done. If we did anything like that in real life, we get fired. Our boss would come over to us and be like, hey, well, why didn't you do your work? Because, Sally over there, we're in a disagreement, so we're not going to work because we disagree. you both will get fired. Get out of here with that. And we let these politicians get away with the silliness. And the internet is wonderful because we get to stay in communication. We get to talk to each other about what's happening instead of taking the word for, like, I can tell you, I've been on science boats when they're like checking the water for different acidity and all that stuff. And I've talked to different people from all around the world. But yet you guys pay attention to fat dudes that sit behind an office desk. And you guys pay attention to what they're telling you. And all of these oil companies have done studies and stuff like that. All of them know exactly what they're doing. The tobacco companies, they know exactly what they're doing. And we keep letting them get away with it. We need to change the rules. We need to have a say-so. We need to be heard from because we have to live here. You know how frustrating it was when you were in your parents' house and you wanted to go hang out with your friends and you wanted to go live your life and do all that, and they continue to tell you, no, you can't do that. Why? Because I said so. Like, what the, what? What do we have going on here? America's supposed to be the land of adults. You leave me alone so I can make a living. I'm going to leave you alone so you can make a living. If you want to get together and make some money together, let's make it happen. Let's get it popping. Until then, just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Welcome to America. But nah, they think that everything, their view is the only view. They think that their experiences, like, how are white folks going to tell us that racism doesn't exist? Are you serious? And we keep showing you example after example.
Buy off legislators, it was the Senate, the Roman Senate, who'd be loyal to them. And this created a gridlock in the Roman Senate, which caused the Roman people to lose faith in their form of government. The Senate was no longer
We just got done talking about that.
Done, because the senators who were loyal to the billionaires, to the Roman billionaires, refused to go along with doing anything that would help the people. All they wanted to do was tax cuts for the billionaires.
That sounds familiar, right? I don't care who you voted for. I don't care who you voted for. It sounds familiar, right?
The Roman Senate. Now, I'm hyper-simplifying, but you can read this in multiple analyses of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. There were three primary elements that the Roman morbidly rich used to erode the power of Rome and replace it with sycophants loyal to them. The first was a polarization and elite gridlock. They basically...
They convinced us, they convinced a lot of you that America is out of control, that America is terrible. They've convinced you. Meanwhile, you're on Instagram and Facebook. You're sharing pictures of your families and stuff. That's magic. That doesn't come out of nowhere. They have you convinced of some silliness. I just spent a whole bunch of time in Florida, and I can't tell you how many times people in Florida brought up the fact that I live in California. They have you guys convinced of some very silly things out there. You guys need to back off the news. Come check out some of these travel channels I have on this channel. Because Lord have mercy, you guys are convinced of some silly things.
Society against itself, and the very, very wealthy people, prevented any forward progress in the legislative arena. The second was the erosion of democratic norms. They destroyed the idea of compromise, collegiality, working things out in the Senate, that sort of thing.
Think Marjorie Taylor Greene. Think those other knuckleheads. The folks that get paid to not do anything but start fights at work. If you started a fight at work, you would get fired.
And the third was the concentration of power in the hands of a small elite who funded and thus controlled Rome's senators.
There you go. There's Elon Musk and everybody else.
They finally succeeded in using that lack of faith in their government, in the Roman government, to replace Roman democracy with Caesarism. Caesarism was, we want a strong man. And the first.
And then here's the problem with that. The reason why we don't want a strong man is because now we're susceptible to all of his whims, all of that person's whims, all of his opinions, all of his rulemaking and decision making. Get out of here with that. Get out of here with that. I would rather have a group of people take a look at the facts and make a decision off of that. I would rather have something like a constitution that doesn't have feelings, that doesn't have mood swings, that doesn't have addictions, that doesn't have cheating tendencies. And that's, again, both sides. I don't care who you're talking about. Both sides employ the same type of person. And they're taking advantage of us because we're not communicating properly. They have us convinced that we don't get along. And again, I just spent a whole bunch of time in Florida and had a great time. Video coming soon.
Caesar to provide that was Julius. He crossed the Rubicon River and seized Rome. And then I believe it was 2 or maybe 3 leaders later, it was all gone by then. I mean, that was the end of it. And, we've seen this, we're seeing something very much like this going on in the United States. I mean, it took decades, but, Augustus Caesar finally just, put a nail in the coffin of democracy in the Roman Republic after, in the years after Julius was assassinated.
Yeah.
Here in America, we have a very analogous situation. I mean, it's striking. We have a small handful of very wealthy right-wing billionaires who, since the 1970s, have been funding gridlock, elite gridlock, using their tax dollars to being offended by the use of their tax dollars to support the American version of free bread, which is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, unemployment insurance, food stamps, quality free primary education, low-cost college, things like that. And they had their first major success in the 1990s. I mean, arguably, Ronald Reagan was their first success, but the big one was in the 1990s.
And going back to, he said right wing. I understand what he's saying, especially it's the right wing of the party, or right wing of the country is coming into power. It's taking over the White House. So I understand kind of what he's trying to say, but this is both sides, man. Both sides. You can't just be on the one side of the fence shaking your fist without looking in the mirror. Because we've had powerful people doing silly shit on the left side, and we have people doing silly shit on the right side.
When Newt Gingrich became Speaker of the House of Representatives, because he began doing in the House of Representatives what had really never been done, arguably since the 1850s. I think you could argue that there was an analogous period, but that led to the Civil War. But he began this whole process that was very similar to what we saw with the Roman Senate, leading in the years leading up to the rise of Julius Caesar, which was a new form of American politics based on political warfare, delegitimizing the American government and the programs of the New Deal and the Great Society, manipulation of the media, populist messaging, and using obstruction as a political strategy. Now, again, these are all things that are analogous to what was happening when basically the billionaires took over ancient Rome.
Yeah, so we see it on the news all the time. We see it on the news all the time.
And his efforts were amplified by media owned by billionaires, Fox so-called News and right-wing hate radio, always trash-talking the New Deal and the Great Society programs, calling for more tax cuts to defund the government and encouraging hatred of politicians in the political process. And there is.
So you remember how during Black Lives Matter, they were talking about defund the police, la, la, la. Now these folks, the folks that are taking over the country now, they're talking about defunding education. They're doing away with a board of education. They're trying to. They're trying to do away with a lot of these programs that are very important. They're very important to your success because come hell or high water, either you know how to do a job or you don't. Either you know things or you don't. Going in and shaking your fist and, sharing your opinion that's not based on fact, that's not going to get you anywhere. You got to be able to do your research. You got to be able to learn. You got to be smart enough to know how to, one, do research so you don't get tricked into silliness.
Just like in Rome, the result was political gridlock, or is, the end of democratic norms of collegiality and compromise, and the concentration of power in the Speaker's office, and then ultimately in the Republican Party itself. This has caused more than 75% of Americans to say that they no longer trust the American government.
I mean,
people have lost faith in our.
He's talking about right-wing politicians and stuff like that, but meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, her stock portfolio outperforms everybody else's. And then when people got wise to it and they're like, okay, whatever moves she makes, make my money do that too, then it got taken away. Or they got in trouble, or they got told not to, or whatever the case may be, whatever it is. Like, that's horseshit. That's horseshit. I don't care what side you're on. There's dirty people everywhere. We, the people who pay, one, their salaries, two, for all these programs that seem to be broken. Isn't it funny how all these programs are broken? Everyone wants them, but they're busted, but we don't have money for it, but we have money to go and blow people up. And then we have money to, to sponsor illegal aliens while the veterans are struggling. Come on, man. How could you not be upset with both sides?
Government, because these billionaires funded this rise of these right-wing obstructionists. And I mean, there's this whole movement now to have a new American Caesar. I mean, literally, it started with a guy named Curtis Yarvin, but now Michael Anton, Charles Haywood, Kevin Roberts. There's a bunch of these guys who, sometimes explicitly calling for American Caesarism. In other words, a strongman government, sometimes implicitly calling for it.
No,
but here we are.
I'm good.
Just like in the Roman Republic, America's morbidly rich and their business interests have funded efforts to denigrate popular government and its programs.
And for as long as I have lived, people talk about how crooked and greedy and bad politicians are. But then you let them convince you that we don't get along. I'm telling you, I have been everywhere. Dubai, Florida, all up and down California, all over the United States. And I don't, like, everyone, generally speaking, everyone's super cool. Everyone is super cool. You start to get to some of these folks that are a little too American, a little too hype about being American, and they want to throw their weight around and they cut you off while you're walking just because they need that win. Like, that shit drives me crazy. But for the most part, like, everyone's like hella cool. Like, why do you let people convince you that something doesn't exist?
States, all just to serve their financial and political interests. Just like in the Roman Empire, the politicians funded by these elite right-wingers crippled the ability of our government to meaningfully meet the need of anybody other than their patrons.
There you go.
Just like in the Roman government, republic, this billionaire-funded gridlock has led our nation to widespread immiseration, homelessness, a breakdown of the social contract, accompanied by the eruption of militia groups and billionaire-funded astroturf movements. Just like in the Roman Republic, the seizure of government by rich men and its subsequent inability to meet the needs of the majority of its citizens has driven popular discontent, loss of trust, and calls for radical reform that includes an abandonment of democratic principles, the rule of law, and the embrace of a strong man like Caesar. And just like in the Roman Republic, that call for reform has been met by a strongman figure. who claims that he alone can fix things and who demands total loyalty and
We've heard that.
subservience from elected officials
We've
and
heard that.
institutions of the state, as we
We've
saw
heard
with the
that.
complete and utter humiliation of Joni Ernst.
How
day before yesterday.
heartbreaking.
Trump
We don't
has now
ever learn.
crossed the Rubicon.
This is exactly why they don't let you read books, and they don't let you do research, and they don't let you teach history. This is history. If you don't study history, you're going to be tricked into the same dumb shit that they did in the past. It's incredible. Are you crazy? Come on. Ah, and it's working. It's working. You know how many people talk about a civil war? I am not interested in a civil war at all. That's just a waste of time and money and resources. Take all of that energy and fix the education here. So then that way, when people call us lazy and stupid, we can come back and be like, you gotta be crazy. You're nuts talking about us like that. I know you're not talking about us like that. Our education system is fully funded, and look at how many doctors we have. Look at how many engineers we have. Oh, and all of these programmers that you need in Silicon Valley, we got those bad motherfuckers too. But instead, we're talking about picking apples, kicking people out of the country, and we're watching all of these politicians jumping around on TV, entertaining us. We should take all of those people out, put them on a show, and then put people in that are about solutions. If you waste time like this is what's happening. It's incredible how similar this is.
He's going to be inaugurated, next Monday. He seized the government and is demanding Caesar-like pledges and performances of loyalty and fealty.
And you can't argue that point.
Trump and his Caesarist
You can't
allies
argue
will
that
follow
point.
This ancient
oh my
roadmap
God.
to destroy democracy with oligarchy first, and then as I repeatedly tell you, I wrote a whole book about this, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. Oligarchy is a transitional form of government. It never lasts because the people get pissed off that the oligarchs are stealing everything. And so countries either flip back into democracy, as we did in the 1930s and the 1860s, or they flip into tyranny, as Russia and Hungary have done.
And I'm not even going to let him finish. I'm going to take over from here. Which, if that's how it goes down, that's how it goes down. I'm not doing strongman nothing. I'm not doing strongman nothing. None of those people over there. What do boys say? The Richmond, north of Richmond? None of those people know what it's like to be me. To be you. They don't know what it's like to struggle. They don't know. They don't know what it's like to have to do research for figuring out what school to go to so you can best understand your path. They don't understand it's either go to school or you have to join the military. They don't understand that. They have bone spurs. They don't understand what it's like to have to make a decision between food and gas. They don't have that decision. They don't ever have that decision to make. The only decision they have to make is, how am I going to trick all the normal people into this silliness? And then they're breaking it. Like, as a kid, I figured this one out. Republicans want to kind of break government to convince you that government doesn't work. So then they can let all the business stuff, the businesses will control this. The businesses will make all the money. The businesses will tell you, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we the best nation in the world? Then let's step up to the moment. Let's step up to it and educate our people. Anyone who's afraid of an educated population doesn't need to be in control. They just don't. You got this knucklehead up here talking about how he loves the illiterate. Like, come on, guys. Come on, guys. I understand. I understand waking up and being motivated and going to get that money. I understand because I am that dude. Every day I wake up 100%. I am grinding. But that doesn't mean that everybody else has to live their life the way I do. We can't just leave people behind because they don't have the same drive. That's crazy. How about we find a spot for them and we put them in a situation where they will be successful? If they're a really good teacher, we teach them how to be a really good teacher, and then we put them in the schools. But we have to fund them. We have to fund the schools. We have to create the people that we want the nation to be built from. But sitting and complaining and not doing anything with the government, that's not the answer. And again, left or right, I don't care. I understand both of your arguments. But this silliness about not talking and Civil War, and I saw that the country parts or the rural parts of Illinois wants to secede from Chicago. You guys make that much corn and that much soybeans? Come on. Stop it. And California talks that way too. There's people in California that want to split it into two Californias instead of actually just communicating and learning. It's wild. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me while I do all kinds of art projects, hit that subscribe button and then click on the little bell. So every time I come out with something new, you'll be alerted. Don't forget to go to coconutjustice.com and get you some dope gear. And with that, I'm out.
Coconut Justice.